The sky above the barren land was the color of fire, burning red with streaks of gold that gave no warmth. The sun pressed down with cruel strength, and the ground below cracked like broken pottery. Every breath carried dust. Every step felt heavy. The land had not known rain for many years, and it seemed even the wind had forgotten how to carry cool air. Ryan walked carefully across the wasteland. His boots pressed into the dry earth, and fine grains of sand rose around him with each step. He carried a small pack on his back, light but important, and at his side hung a metal flask. Inside that flask was the one thing more valuable than gold or jewels. It held water. Only a few mouthfuls remained, but to Ryan it was life itself. He touched it from time to time, checking that it was still there, still sealed, still his hope against the desert. He was not lost, though the land looked empty in every direction. His path was guided by broken pillars that rose from the ground like bones of a forgotten giant. They were ruins of a city long gone, a city that once stood proud when rivers flowed and lakes shone like mirrors. He had come to search those ruins for maps, for signs, for anything that might lead to a new source of water. Every settlement that survived on this world dreamed of finding such a place. The silence was deep, broken only by the sound of his own breathing and the crunch of his steps. It was the kind of silence that made him think he was the only living thing left on the planet. That thought was heavy, and he tried to push it away. He looked up at the sky, squinting against the glare, and whispered to himself, "Keep moving. Just keep moving." Then the ground trembled. It was faint at first, like the distant roll of thunder. Ryan froze, his hand tightening on the strap of his pack. He looked around, scanning the land, but there was nothing but the shimmer of heat rising from the horizon. Then the tremble came again, stronger this time, and dust shook loose from the tall pillars nearby. His heart began to pound. Something alive was moving, and it was large. Ryan crouched low and tried to make himself small against the stone of a fallen wall. His eyes searched the distance, and at last he saw it. At first it looked like a mirage, a shape that wavered in the heat, too strange to be real. But as it drew closer, the image sharpened into something he could not mistake. It was a dragon. She moved slowly, her steps heavy, her body swaying as if every motion cost her pain. Her wings dragged against the ground, torn and cracked. The sun reflected weakly from her scales, which should have shone like armor but now looked dull, almost gray. Her neck bent low, and her head hung close to the ground. She was a creature of legend, yet in this moment she looked more like a shadow of her true self. Ryan pressed back against the stone, fear and disbelief rising together inside him. Dragons were not myths here. Stories of them had always been told around fires, warnings, and wonders mixed together. Some tales said they were destroyers of towns, fire from the sky. Others claimed they were guardians of old secrets, beings tied to the heart of the planet itself. But never had he thought he would stand so close to one. The dragon stopped a short distance away. Her chest rose and fell with deep, rough breaths. She lifted her head just enough to look at him. Her eyes, though faded, still carried a strange glow, like dying embers that refused to go dark. She opened her mouth, and instead of a roar, instead of fire or threat, came a voice cracked with weakness. "Please, sir, could you spare a sip of water?" The words shook Ryan more than any roar ever could. His body stiffened. His hand moved without thought to the flask at his side. He could hardly believe what he heard. A dragon, mighty in stories, was begging him, a single human, for the thing he carried. His throat was dry as he swallowed hard. He could not answer at first. The flask felt heavier than ever, as if it held the weight of his fate. He thought of his own thirst, of the long journey ahead, of the danger of wasting even a single drop. But the dragon's eyes held him. They were not eyes of power or hunger. They were eyes of sorrow, eyes of a mother, eyes of a creature brought low by suffering. The silence stretched. Dust drifted in the air between them. The sun burned above them both, merciless and unkind. Ryan stood frozen, a man with little to give, faced with a being who once had everything but now had nothing. And the question hung in the air, heavy as the heat itself. Ryan stood frozen with his hand resting on the flask. His heart beat fast in his chest. A dragon was kneeling before him, her great wings spread weakly across the sand. She did not raise her head high with pride. She did not roar or threaten. Instead, she begged for water. Her words still echoed in his ears, soft and broken, yet filled with weight. He wanted to believe it was a trick, some test of courage or trap set by a beast far older and wiser than him. His mind raced with stories told in his village. Some said dragons deceived men, luring them close with gentle words before striking. Others said dragons never spoke at all, that they were only fire and hunger. Yet here she was, speaking in a voice dry with thirst. His fingers tightened around the flask. The metal was warm from the sun, and he could feel the little weight of water inside. He knew exactly how much was left, for he had counted it again and again on his journey. 2 days of life. Maybe 3 if he stretched it. That water was not just liquid. It was time. Time to reach the ruins. Time to search. Time to survive. If he gave even a sip to the dragon, his own life might shorten to 1 day, perhaps less. He looked down at the flask as if it were gold. Then he looked up again. The dragon's eyes met his. They were not sharp with anger but wide with weakness. He could see how dry her mouth was, how her breaths came with effort. He thought she looked not like a monster but like a traveler who had lost all hope. Ryan stepped forward carefully. His legs trembled, not from weakness but from fear of being near such a creature. The dragon lowered her head further, resting her jaw upon the cracked earth. Dust rose around her nostrils as she sighed. Her great body looked thin, and her scales had lost their shine. Ryan stopped only a few steps away. The flask hung at his side. He tried to speak, but his voice came out as little more than a whisper. "Why ask me? You could crush me. You could take it." The dragon's eyes closed, and her voice rumbled weakly. "I could, long ago. But not now. Even if I had strength, I would not steal from one who carries so little. I am not here to destroy. I am here to beg. For me. For the life I carry within me." Her words puzzled him. "Life you carry?" he asked. The dragon gave a slow nod. "Eggs," she said. "Hidden. Waiting. If I wither, they will perish. If I fall, so will they." Her voice shook, but it was steady enough to carry meaning. Ryan's mouth went dry. He had heard old legends that dragons guarded their young fiercely, willing to fight armies to protect a single egg. Yet here was a mother who could not even lift her head high. She asked for help not as a ruler but as a parent. The choice pulled at him. On one side was his survival. On the other side was something greater, though it was not easy to see. He looked at the horizon. Empty desert stretched in every direction, as if the world itself waited for his answer. He thought of the settlements he had passed through. People lived in fear, their wells running low, their hopes fading. What would they say if they knew he had given away water to a dragon? Some might call him foolish. Some might call him cursed. Yet deep inside, he felt something stir. A thought rose unbidden: if even a dragon could fall low enough to beg, perhaps the world was not divided between monsters and men. Perhaps both could suffer. Perhaps both could hope. Slowly, with a deep breath, he unclipped the flask from his belt. The sound of metal striking against the buckle rang sharp in the silence. The dragon's eyes opened again, watching closely but without greed. Ryan lifted the flask and shook it gently. He could hear the faint slosh of water inside, such a small sound yet louder to him than thunder. His hand trembled. He removed the cap. He did not hand the flask to her. That would have been madness, for her mouth was vast, her teeth sharp, her tongue stronger than his whole arm. Instead, he crouched and poured a thin stream onto a shallow patch of cracked ground. The water glistened as it ran into the cracks, making a tiny pool. The dragon lowered her head slowly, carefully. Her great tongue touched the ground with surprising gentleness, lapping at the water like a creature afraid to spill a single drop. She drank quietly, no sound but the faint movement of her tongue against the dust. Ryan held his breath the entire time. His flask felt lighter already, though he had poured only a little. When the last drop was gone, the dragon lifted her head. Her eyes met his again. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice carried a weight of sincerity that no story could have prepared him for. Ryan sealed his flask, his throat tight. He had chosen. He had given away a piece of his own life. The desert wind stirred around them, carrying heat across the barren land. And for the first time, Ryan felt the desert was watching him. The dragon closed her eyes and lay still, her breathing calmer than before. He did not know what would come of this choice, but he knew one thing clearly. The path ahead had changed. The desert sun moved slowly across the sky, each hour stretching longer than the last. Ryan stood near the dragon, his flask back at his side, lighter than before. The choice he had made still weighed on him, but when he looked at her, he felt no regret. Her breathing had steadied. The weakness in her eyes had lessened, though she was still far from strong. For a long while, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy but not threatening. Ryan watched as the dragon shifted her body with effort, folding her torn wings closer. Her scales, though dulled, caught a faint glimmer of light again. He realized that even a small sip of water had given her more strength than he imagined. At last, the dragon raised her head a little higher. Her voice was rough, but it carried gratitude. "You gave when you had little. That is rare. Few of your kind would have done the same." Ryan shook his head. "I almost did not. I still wonder if I was foolish." "Foolishness and kindness are not the same," the dragon said. "To share is to risk, but it is also to honor life." Her words sank into him. He had never thought of sharing in that way. In the settlements, water was guarded like treasure. To give even a sip was to invite trouble. Yet here he stood, alive, with a dragon who called his act honor instead of weakness. Ryan crouched on the dry ground and studied her closely. Now that his fear had lessened, he noticed things he had not seen before. Scars crossed her scales, old and new. Dust clung to her wings. She looked not like a predator from legend but like a traveler beaten down by years of hardship. "What is your name?" he asked. The dragon tilted her head as if surprised. "You ask as though I am a neighbor. You speak to me. You begged me. That makes you more than a story," Ryan replied. Her eyes softened. "Kalara," she said at last. The sound of her name rolled like a soft rumble of thunder, deep but not harsh. "It has been long since I shared it with any human." Ryan repeated it under his breath. "Kalara." The name carried weight, as if the desert itself listened. "And yours?" she asked. "Ryan." Kalara lowered her head slightly, as though giving respect. "Ryan. I will remember it." A faint wind moved across the wasteland then, carrying dry sand in little swirls. Ryan pulled his cloak tighter around himself. He wanted to ask her many things: why she was here, how she had survived, what she meant when she spoke of life within her, but the words caught in his throat. He feared pressing too far, yet he also feared silence. It was Kalara who spoke next. "You wonder why I begged. You wonder why one like me, who could once split mountains with fire, would kneel before a man with a flask." Ryan met her eyes but did not answer. She continued, her voice low. "I carry eggs. They rest in a cavern not far from here. My strength is nearly gone, and without water I cannot guard them. If I fall, so will they. I begged because pride does not matter when life is at stake. Ryan felt a shiver. He had suspected something like this, but hearing it spoken gave it weight. He thought of tiny lives locked within shells, waiting for their chance to breathe. He thought of how close they were to perishing in silence if Kalara's strength failed. You could have left me, she said softly. Many would have. Yet you shared. That small act may carry further than you know. Her words stirred something in him. He had always seen himself as an ordinary man, a traveler with no power except his will to keep moving. Yet here was a dragon telling him his choice might matter beyond himself. Ryan sat down fully, resting his back against a fallen stone pillar. The heat pressed down on him, and his lips were cracked, but he forced himself to speak. I do not know if I can give more. If I pour out too much, I may not survive. But I also cannot walk away now. Not after seeing you like this. Kalara lowered her gaze. I do not ask for all. Even a little may be enough until I can guide you to water hidden deep. Ryan blinked. There is still water left on this world. She nodded faintly. Hidden. Guarded by those who remain. Poisoned in places, pure in others. Few know the paths. I have walked them longer than you can imagine. Hope sparked in his chest, though he tried to hold it down. Too many had chased such promises before and found nothing but dust. Yet Kalara spoke with certainty, not as a dreamer but as one who knew. He lifted the flask again, hesitated, then poured another small stream into the same cracked ground. Kalara drank carefully, her great tongue moving with the patience of one who valued every drop. When she lifted her head again, her eyes held a faint glow, stronger than before. You risk much, she said. But you will not regret it. You will see that even in a dying land, life can rise again. Ryan sealed the flask tightly. His throat burned with thirst, but inside him burned something else as well. A strange bond had formed between them, fragile yet real. He was still afraid, still uncertain, but he no longer felt alone in the desert. Above them, the sun began to sink, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Shadows stretched long across the broken ground. Ryan glanced at Kalara and realized that his journey had changed. He was no longer walking only for himself. The evening air was cooler than the burning day, yet the desert still held heat within its cracked earth. Ryan and Kalara rested near the ruins of a broken tower that leaned against the horizon like a tired sentinel. The dragon lay with her wings folded close, her great body rising and falling slowly as strength returned to her. Ryan sat near a piece of fallen stone, his cloak wrapped tightly around him, guarding against the night wind. For a while, they spoke little. Ryan kept touching his flask, as though making sure it was still real, still holding what remained of his life. Each time his fingers brushed the metal, he felt the weight of choice pressing on him again. He had given twice already, and still he lived, though thirst gnawed at him. The desert was not forgiving, yet he told himself that he would endure. When Kalara lifted her head and spoke, her voice carried more strength than before. You wonder about me. You wonder why I roam this wasteland instead of ruling the skies. Ryan looked at her carefully. Yes. I have heard stories of dragons. None of them spoke of weakness. A faint glow stirred in Kalara's eyes. Not anger, but memory. Once, we were many. We lived where rivers sang and mountains shone with snow. We guarded springs that never dried, pools hidden in the roots of the world. Humans came then, not as enemies, but as wanderers seeking a place to live. We watched them grow, build, and change. Some of us feared them. Some of us admired them. I was among those who hoped for peace. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where stars were beginning to appear. But peace does not always hold. Raiders came from beyond the skies. They hungered for what this world had: its hidden waters, its fertile heart. They poisoned rivers to weaken us. They cut the earth with machines, tearing open veins where springs once flowed. Many dragons fell. Many humans too. The land has not healed since. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He had always known the world was broken, but he had not known how. His people told only fragments of this tale, stories of ruin and loss without clear cause. To hear it from Kalara gave shape to the mystery. "You survived," he said softly. "Yes," Kalara answered, her voice heavy. "I wandered. I fought when I could, fled when I must. I kept to shadows, drinking from hidden streams until even they turned bitter. I learned to endure. But now my strength runs thin. I have no more time to waste." Ryan tilted his head. "You spoke of eggs. Are they near?" Kalara's body shifted as she turned her head toward the west. "A cavern lies not far from here. Within it are 3 eggs. My last hope. If they die, my line ends. If they live, perhaps the world may yet see dragons soar again." Her words struck him deeply. He tried to picture the eggs, silent in the dark cavern, their fragile shells holding the promise of life. He thought of his own people, who struggled each day to find water, who dreamed of new springs but found only dust. Life was fragile everywhere, not only for dragons. Kalara looked back at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the starlight. "That is why I begged you. I have endured much, but for them I would bow to anyone, even to a lone traveler." Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "And you believe I can help you?" "I am just one man with a nearly empty flask." "You are more than that," Kalara said firmly. "You chose to share. That choice marks you. It is rare. It is powerful." Ryan shook his head, but her words stirred something inside him. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, surviving one day to the next. Yet Kalara spoke to him as if his choices mattered beyond his own life. Silence settled again, broken only by the sound of the wind brushing across stone. The stars grew brighter. The moon rose pale and distant. Ryan finally spoke, his voice steady though soft. "If your cavern is near, then I will help you reach it. I cannot promise more than that. My water is almost gone. But I cannot leave you or your eggs to perish." Kalara's head lowered, her great eyes closing for a moment. When she opened them again, there was a faint light within them that was not only reflection but something like hope. "Then you will walk with me. And I will show you things hidden from your kind for many lifetimes." Her words carried both promise and mystery. Ryan felt his heart race. He did not know what path he had stepped upon, but he knew it was no longer only his. The fate of eggs hidden in a cavern, and perhaps more, now lay linked to him. The night stretched long, but neither slept much. Ryan kept his hand near the flask, guarding what little remained. Kalara rested her wings and gathered what strength she could. When the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon, both rose. The cavern awaited, and with it truths that would shape them both. The morning sun rose like a blazing coin in the sky, burning away the cool air of night. The desert stretched wide, endless, and harsh, every hill of sand shimmering with heat. Ryan walked beside Kalara as she moved slowly across the wasteland. Her great wings hung close to her sides, dragging now and then against the cracked earth, but her steps were steadier than they had been the day before. The small sips of water he had shared had given her strength enough to travel. Ryan's pack felt heavier than before, though he carried little more than a few tools, dried food, and his flask. The true weight was in his thoughts. Each step forward reminded him that his supply of water was running out. He could feel the thirst scratching at his throat already, but he kept moving. His decision to help Kalara carried him forward as much as his own will. They walked in silence at first. The only sounds were the crunch of Ryan's boots and the steady thud of Kalara's claws pressing into the earth. Yet it was not an empty silence. It was the kind of silence that spoke of trust slowly forming. After a time, Kalara's voice broke the quiet. The cavern is not far now. By nightfall we may reach it. Ryan nodded, though he felt doubt. The desert often played tricks with distance. A mountain that looked close could take days to reach. Still, he trusted that Kalara knew her way better than he did. They passed broken stones that jutted from the ground like old teeth. Some were carved with markings worn away by wind and time. Ryan slowed to touch one of them, running his fingers over grooves that hinted at symbols. "Were these yours?" he asked. Kalara turned her head. "They were ours, long ago. My kin marked the land where water flowed, so we could guide each other. But raiders came and burned many of these signs. Few remain, and fewer still can read them. You touch the bones of memory." Ryan looked at the stone with new respect before moving on. Each step now felt like walking across the pages of a forgotten book. The sun climbed higher, and heat pressed down like a heavy hand. Ryan's cloak stuck to his back with sweat. His lips cracked, and his flask grew lighter each time he tilted it for a careful sip. Kalara noticed his weariness. "You suffer," she said softly. "Yet you keep walking. Few would do the same beside a dragon." Ryan gave a weak smile. "Perhaps I am foolish, as I said before. Or perhaps you are brave," Kalara replied. "Foolishness seeks only its own end. Bravery risks for another. You walk not only for yourself now." Her words carried weight, and Ryan felt strength return to his steps. As the day dragged on, a faint shape appeared in the distance. It was not a ruin or a mountain but a low ridge of dark stone rising from the desert floor. Kalara lifted her head, and her voice grew firm. "There. The cavern lies beneath that ridge." Hope stirred in Ryan's chest, though his body ached with exhaustion. He fixed his eyes on the ridge, using it as a beacon. Step after step, he followed Kalara until the shadows of evening began to stretch long across the sand. When they neared the ridge, the air felt cooler. A thin breeze swept through cracks in the stone, carrying with it a faint scent unlike the dry dust of the desert. Ryan inhaled sharply. It was the smell of dampness, faint but real. "Water." Kalara slowed, her wings trembling as she lifted them slightly. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dimming light. The cavern breathed still. "That means the egg's live." Ryan's heart pounded. He had walked across empty lands, seeing only death and dryness. To find even the faintest sign of water felt like a miracle. They reached the mouth of the cavern, a wide crack between towering rocks. Darkness yawned inside, cool air spilling out like a whisper of another world. Ryan hesitated, peering into the shadow. The desert behind him was harsh and endless, but the cavern before him promised mystery and danger alike. Kalara stepped forward, her claws scraping against stone. She looked back at him once. "Come, Ryan. You gave me strength to reach this place. Now you must see what your choice has saved." Ryan swallowed hard, his throat dry, but he nodded. He tightened his cloak, adjusted his pack, and stepped into the cavern beside her. Inside, the air was cooler, almost soothing. The walls shimmered faintly where moisture clung to the stone. Drops of water glistened like jewels, falling into tiny pools at the edges of the path. The sound of dripping echoed softly, a song more beautiful than any he had heard. His thirst burned stronger at the sight, but he held himself back. This was not his moment. It was Kalara's. Deeper they went, their path lit by the faint glow of crystals buried in the rock. At last, Kalara stopped and lowered her head toward a wide hollow in the stone floor. There, resting on a bed of dust and leaves, were 3 large eggs. Their shells were pale, faintly glowing with lines that pulsed gently like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Ryan stared, his breath caught. Life. Fragile, waiting, beautiful. Kalara lowered her head until her snout touched the ground beside them. Her voice was soft, almost breaking. "Here lies my hope. And because of you, They may yet live. Ryan felt a weight settle on him. He had not only shared water with a stranger. He had stepped into the future of a dying race. The cavern was quiet except for the soft sound of dripping water echoing from the walls. Faint light shimmered off the damp stone, casting moving patterns across the floor. Ryan's eyes adjusted to the darkness, and he saw Kalara's shadow stretching over the 3 fragile eggs. They were slightly larger than his head, pale and smooth, resting on a bed of sand and dried leaves. Even from a distance, he could feel the life inside them, fragile but insistent. Kalara lowered her head closer to the eggs. Her great claws dug lightly into the stone, careful not to touch them. She pressed her warm snout near the largest egg. Her voice, low and trembling, carried both hope and fear. "You must live, little ones. You must survive." Ryan knelt beside her, careful to stay outside the reach of her claws. He studied the eggs. Fine cracks had begun to form along one of them. The shell looked thin in places, almost translucent. He thought of his own family far away, imagining the care he had been given as a child. To see life so delicate in front of him, and to know it depended on Kalara, struck him with awe. "Kalara," he said softly, "what happens if they hatch too soon?" "They may die if I cannot protect them," she replied. "They are strong, but the heat of the desert and lack of water has weakened them. That is why I begged you." Her eyes met his, glowing faintly in the dim light. "You saved them. Even a small sip can change their fate." Ryan held his flask in his hand, now almost empty. He looked at the last few drops. Every moment counted. He poured a tiny amount carefully into a shallow pool of stone near the eggs. Kalara watched intently, her eyes shining with hope. She lowered her head, letting the water touch her tongue and then carefully sip it. Every drop mattered. Every drop was life. The dragon's body trembled slightly as the water revived her. Ryan's heart raced as he saw her strength returning slowly. Her wings lifted slightly, and her chest rose and fell more easily. She turned her gaze back to the eggs, her snout gently nudging them. The cracks widened. Tiny movements could be seen beneath the shells. Ryan knelt closer, careful to keep a safe distance. "They're moving," he whispered, amazed. Kalara's deep eyes softened. "They are waking. You must stay calm. The smallest noise could startle them." Minutes passed slowly, each one filled with tension. Ryan watched as the first hatchling began to break free. The shell crumbled under the tiny push of its head. Its small body was wet and fragile, but it moved with determination. Kalara's tail flicked lightly, her eyes wide with relief and awe. The second egg followed, cracking open more quickly. Ryan reached out instinctively, but Kalara's gentle rumble stopped him. "Not yet. Let me guide them," she said. The third egg was the smallest, and it seemed weaker. Its shell cracked slowly, almost reluctantly. Ryan's heart thumped. He had given water to a dragon, risking his own survival, and now he watched life emerge because of it. The hatchling struggled, but Kalara lowered her head and nudged it carefully with her snout. Encouraged by her warmth, the tiny dragon finally emerged. All 3 hatchlings stood, wet and trembling, but alive. Their wings were small and fragile, their eyes wide and curious. Kalara curled her great body protectively around them. She lowered her head to nuzzle each one, murmuring softly in a language Ryan could not understand, yet it sounded full of love and reassurance. Ryan felt a warmth inside him he had never known. He had come into this world as a wanderer, thirsty and alone, yet he had helped bring life into it. He looked at Kalara, whose eyes now glimmered with gratitude. "You did this," she said, not accusing but honoring him. "Without your choice, without your water, they would not have survived." Ryan shook his head, unsure what to say. Words felt small compared to what he had witnessed. The tiny dragons moved closer to their mother, and she wrapped them gently with her wings, forming a shield of warmth and safety. Outside, the first hints of dawn touched the cavern entrance. The desert outside was still harsh, but within the stone walls, life had returned. Water shimmered in tiny pools, and the soft sounds of dripping echoed like music. Ryan realized that survival was not only about finding water or staying alive. It was also about choices, courage, and hope. Kalara finally turned her gaze toward him. "You will not leave this place thirsty," she said with a faint rumble of promise. "There is water here, hidden beneath the stone. You have risked much. You will be rewarded." Ryan's throat was dry, but his heart was full. He had walked across a desert, given water to a creature of legend, and now he had witnessed the miracle of life. The hatchlings moved beneath Kalara's wings, chirping softly. Life, fragile and new, had returned to the desert because a human had chosen to act with kindness. The cavern seemed brighter now, though it was still stone and shadow. Ryan understood that his journey was not only about survival. It was about connection, courage, and the quiet power of giving when one had very little. The desert outside might still be harsh, but within this cavern, life had found a home. The cavern was alive with quiet energy. Tiny dragons moved beneath Kalara's wings, their small eyes bright with curiosity. Their soft chirps echoed off the stone walls, blending with the dripping of water in tiny pools. Ryan stood a few steps away, his flask now empty but his heart full. He had come into this world as a traveler, alone and thirsty, yet he had helped create life. Kalara lifted her head, her eyes glowing faintly in the soft light of dawn filtering through the cavern entrance. "They are strong," she said. "You gave them a chance, Ryan. Few humans would have done the same." Ryan nodded slowly. He looked at the hatchlings, tiny and fragile, yet determined. "I only shared water," he said quietly. "You did all the rest." Kalara's deep rumble sounded almost like laughter. "Water is more than liquid. It is life. You risked your own to give it. That makes you a guardian, not just a traveler." Ryan felt a warmth he had never known. The desert outside was harsh, unyielding, yet inside this stone shelter, life thrived. He thought of the barren lands he had crossed, the endless heat, the cracked earth, and he realized that courage was not only facing danger. It was making choices when survival itself hung in the balance. The hatchlings began to explore, moving carefully around their mother, testing their wings. Kalara guided them, nudging them gently and letting them try small steps on their own. Ryan watched as they learned to trust their strength, small and fragile as it was. He understood now that survival was not only about strength but about care, protection, and guidance. Kalara turned her gaze to the cavern's entrance. The desert stretched endlessly, but she spoke with quiet certainty. "Beyond this place, the world is harsh. You risked yourself to save life. Now it is time for you to know that even here, in the most unlikely places, life endures." Ryan followed her gaze. He could see the harsh sun climbing higher, painting the sands in gold and red. For the first time, the desert did not feel empty. It felt full of possibility. Even in death and drought, small things could survive. Life could find a way. Kalara lowered her head near him. "You have given hope to my kind. You will not leave this place without it?" Ryan realized she was speaking not only of the hatchlings but of him. He had feared for his own survival, yet he had acted in kindness. In doing so, he had formed a bond with a creature more powerful than anything he had imagined. That bond now promised more than friendship. It promised protection, guidance, and a new understanding of life itself. He knelt beside one of the tiny dragons, letting it touch his hand with its soft snout. The little creature chirped and stumbled, but Kalara nudged it gently until it regained balance. Ryan smiled. He could feel a new responsibility in his chest, a connection to a life that depended on care, courage, and love. "You will guide them?" he asked Kalara. "I will," she said. And one day, they will soar across these lands. They will remember the kindness of one human who risked all for life. They will carry your memory in their hearts. Ryan's throat tightened. He had never thought of himself as important in the grand scheme of the world. Yet here, in the quiet of the cavern, he realized that small acts could echo far beyond the moment. One choice, one sip of water, could shape the future. The hatchlings chirped again, testing their wings and stepping cautiously across the floor. Kalara nudged them forward, and they began to move with growing confidence. Ryan watched, knowing that this fragile beginning would grow into something strong, unstoppable, and free. Kalara turned to him once more. "You will not thirst again, Ryan. There is water here, hidden beneath the stone. And if you ever need guidance, my kind will honor you for the life you saved." Ryan's lips curved in a small smile. He had crossed the desert as a lone traveler, uncertain of the future, and now he stood at the heart of a miracle. The dragon and her young had survived because he had dared to give when he had almost nothing. That courage had returned life to a barren land. He looked around the cavern one last time. The walls shimmered faintly with moisture, the tiny pools reflected the soft light, and the hatchlings explored with wonder. Kalara's great body curled protectively around them, a shield of warmth and care. Ryan understood that this was more than a victory for life. It was proof that compassion, courage, and choice could change the world. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the desert outside began to sparkle with heat. Ryan stepped closer to Kalara and the hatchlings. "Thank you," he whispered, "for showing me life can endure." Kalara's eyes met his. "And thank you, Ryan, for reminding the world that even one human can make a difference." For the first time, Ryan felt the desert not as empty, harsh, or unforgiving, but alive with possibility. The journey had changed him. The dragon and her young had changed him. And the story of that day, of water given and life saved, would live on in ways he could never imagine. Outside, the wind stirred the sand, but inside the cavern, life had found its place. The future waited, fragile and bright, carried on the wings of dragons and the courage of a human who chose to share. Ryan watched the hatchlings stretch their tiny wings and chirp to each other. Kalara nudged them gently, her eyes soft and proud. He realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could become the greatest legacies. And in that moment, he understood that life, no matter how fragile, could always endure.